Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
And we're discussing chapter 35 this week, Hard Decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And we start in Rain's point of view as he's observing Malta bandage and administer to the satrap. And this is where the point of view where you have mentioned in a future point of view, Rain is like, oh, I can't believe that he doesn't see how fake Malta is.
Yes. Yeah. So I think 2 or 3 chapters ago was talking about when Rain saw Malta from across the deck. He saw her babying the satrap and was so distraught that that was, that she felt so caringly towards him and it was so real and she clearly loved him. And now here we are and he is front row center to babying, and suddenly he doesn't think she likes him at all anymore. This is actually really fake, and he can't believe the satrap isn't seeing right through it.
The satrap himself refused to touch his wound. Only Malta would do for that duty, but Rain refused to be jealous. He clung to her presence as if she anchored his world, yet refused to acknowledge his dependence on her. It amazed him that the man could not hear the falsity in Malta's sweetness to him. And then, all the while, the satrap is leaning forward and shouting insults and taunts at the people who are drowning on the deck of the Jamaillian ship that is sinking right now. Just like, hey, Lord, didn't you say you would always be by my side?
Farewell, Lord Craith. Give your good counsel to my white serpent now. And just, calling them out by name and saying, here's what I'm going to do to your family when I get back. So Kennit's lesson has clearly taken root in his heart because he is definitely remembering how he's going to kill these people and what he's going to do to them afterwards because they've done this slight to him. And I think that's really interesting for the satrap that he has learned something from Kennit in his short time with him. But yes, we have Rain just in awe of his audacity.
Rain is thinking here that they would all meet the same end because he had not seen a single sailor survive as of yet. It was too much for the Rain Wilder. You mock the dying, he rebuked the satrap. I mock the traitorous, and my vengeance will be sweet, he called loudly across the water. Avidly, his eyes tallied the Jamaillian nobles who stood helplessly on the decks of the foundering ship. So it was sinking at the moment, and as the serpent kind of starts to swim away, Cosgo opens his mouth again. Oh, serpent, don't leave. Here's a tender. Ah! He gasped suddenly and bent over his wound. Malta looked as innocent as a babe as she held the rag firmly to the injury and proclaimed, Oh, Lord Satrap, you must stop your shouting. Look, it has started your bleeding again. Come, we must go below. Leave them to Sa's justice.
Yes. So
Malta's putting pressure on there to be like, come on, let's just go below.
Knock it off. And you know what? Malta is really adept at handling the satrap, I guess. She's learned how to handle him in her time with him. And so it's kind of funny to see from Rain's point of view, her doing just that because she does look really innocent, but clearly she has something to do with this.
As the satrap is going below, as being escorted below by Malta and Rain, he is saying out loud, Kennit was right. He saved me, At the end, Kennit recognized that my survival was more important than his. Brave soul. I defied those traitors, but when they came with the killing thrust, brave Kennit took my death for me. Now there is a name that will be remembered with honor, King Kennit of the Pirate Isles. So the satrap sought to crown himself with Kennit's deeds and reputation. Rain embroidered his conceited fantasy for him. Oh, no doubt minstrels will make wondrous songs to tell of your great adventure. To Bingtown and the Rain Wilds, the bold young satrap journeyed, to be saved at the end by the unselfish pirate king who belatedly recognized the ultimate importance of the satrap of all Jamaillia, is the only fitting end for such a song. Rain drawled the words, loving that Malta must fight to keep from smiling. Between them, the satrap's face lit with delight. And the satrap's like, yeah, excellent concept. There's going to be a whole verse dedicated to those who betrayed me and how they died. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
And Malta's like, yep, doubtless, that's great, but we got to go below.
Right. And, it's a very interesting situation because we do get to see ultimately, I think you brought it up before a few chapters ago, that Kennit is able to get what he wants in death because of the actions in last chapter where he is recognized by the satrap that
Yeah.
and actually given a great memorial and treated as though the Pirate Isles are a kingdom on which he controlled.
That is the greatest sacrifice you could make for the satrap, is sacrificing your life to protect him.
Yes. And if we think about it, so last chapter we had Kennit in front of the satrap. He literally said to him, "Get behind me, I'll save you." And then he died. But I think what's more important is something I didn't mention at the time because I forgot. When the satrap when Kennit is sort of losing consciousness and calling out for Paragon, he does make the comment, easy now, boy. I've got you. I'll take care of you, because he's repeating what Paragon always said to himself. And it's pretty easy to imagine that Satrap is still awake at this moment and probably heard that.
Right.
And Kennit is older than the Satrap by
maybe
20
years
years
or something.
10, 20 years. We don't know exactly, obviously, but he is older and he is an authority figure to the Satrap, clearly. And so I think that would be a really comforting thing for the Satrap to have heard and done even more for gaining his favor in this moment here where he's saying, he was noble and smart and sacrificed everything. And it definitely elevated him in the satrap's eyes.
So as they're walking away and as Malta says, like, hey, we have to get below, her anxious eyes met Rain's, sharing her fear that they would not survive the day. Despite the darkness of the emotion, Rain treasured that he could sense so much of what she felt just by standing near her. He gathered his strength and radiated calmness toward her. So this is also maybe what you were mentioning, how they started to kind of sense each other a bit more through their connections. Because made sure to read that Rain felt that Malta was struggling to keep from smiling during his story, which you can see sometimes on people that you know really well. But also if he can feel their emotions.
Yeah, it'd be way easier to tell.
Yeah. Exactly. So, that connection is definitely growing between them, and they are sharing some sort of supernatural connection through being elderlings.
Right, which makes sense because Rain has connected with her through the dream box, but also on his own through Tintaglia as well.
Mm-hmm. And then once again, we switch points of view over to Brashen. And Brashen is just kind of numb. Is just like, okay, now there's a dead man on my deck, the man who's going to burn down this ship.
Right. I think there's a lot going on for Brashen, right? So last chapter, he wasn't able to get to Althea the way he wanted to and had to go after Kennit, which he didn't care about. And that's a lot. And Kennit died on his deck. So there's a lot going on. He's kind of not sure what to make of it. I think he's also just sort of so disappointed in Paragon for not listening to him that he's not really sure what to do.
And now he can't really reach Paragon again because he feels something happening within his ship, and Paragon's just been silent since the last murmured words that no one could hear to Kennit. So like Brashen doesn't really know what to do. Brashen is fearing what might be happening to Paragon right now.
Right. And there's the added stress of the fact that they are slowly being surrounded by the Jamaillian ships again.
And everyone's looking to him.
Yes. So much like Malta's fear here, we have the fear coming from Brashen as well on a completely different ship because things aren't looking good. We left off last chapter with the Jamaillian fleet surrounding them again, but also tossing more rocks and sometimes successfully hitting the ships. So things are not looking great, and the ships aren't really responding to people. Who knows what they're going to do next? Who knows what the plan is? And he has to keep a brave face because Clef is asking, are we going to get out of this? And he has to respond, I don't know.
Yep, we're going to try, though. And you're right. The ships, the Jamaillian ships and the fleet are staying back. Clef also asks why they're coming in, and Brashen's like, they're probably scared of the live ships. That's why they're just going to throw the rocks until we sink.
Right.
That's good on them. And there's some description about what's happening around. So the Jamaillian ship is going down, and Brashen is looking at the other two of Kennit's ships, which would be the Marietta and Motley. They were engaged adjacent Jamaillian vessels and were trying to force a gap in the ring of vessels that surrounded them. And they're still being shot with rocks, or at least rocks are shot towards them. It doesn't look good, Clef decided. No, but we aren't dead yet either. A strange woman was stepping down onto the railing from Paragon's hands. So Etta comes onto deck of the Paragon, doesn't even look at Brashen or anyone else, just goes right to Kennit's body and right across from Mother. Mother reached across Kennit to rest a wrinkled hand on her shoulder. The woman's eyes met across his body. For a moment, the dark-haired woman studied Mother's face. Then she spoke quietly. I loved him. I believe he loved me. I carry his child. The woman smoothed Kennit's curls back from his still face. Brashen, feeling an intruder, looked away from them to the retreating Vivacia. Wintrow and Althea stood together on the foredeck, conferring about something. Brashen's heart leapt at the sight of her. Cursing himself for a fool, he sprang suddenly to the rail. If one woman could cross, so could another. Althea, he bellowed, but the two ships had already drifted apart. Nevertheless, at his call, she spun. She sprinted wildly toward the bow. His heart choked him as he saw her spring wildly to the figurehead's shoulder. There was no mistaking the shock on Vivacia's face. She caught Althea in her headlong flight. Her words to her ship carried clearly across the water to him. His heart flew on them. Please, Vivacia, you don't need me. I want to go to him. Vivacia glanced over at Paragon, then her voice rang clear across the water. Paragon, this one I give to you as well. And she tosses Althea like a parent might toss a child, and Brashen is terrified because Althea is fully in the air, and Paragon's like, I got her, and just swings her onto the board and into Brashen's arms.
Right. Well, to be fair, I don't think anybody except for the other ship knows that Paragon has opened his eyes yet, because he did so when he was holding Kennit to see him for the first time. So
I just saw for sure.
Well,
everybody on the other ship.
Everybody else though probably isn't paying attention to when he's turning around to lay people on the ground enough to notice that his eyes are open, because obviously there's bigger things to worry about. And so I think some of Brashen's fear here comes from the fact that
he's blind.
He's blind. And he's like, she's going to die. But she is caught very gracefully, and Paragon helps her and takes her on board gently.
So Brashen clasps her to him, folding her into his arms. He didn't even try to speak. He had no breath left. When he looked up at Paragon, the ship looked back. His pale blue eyes crinkled in a grin. Brashen was transfixed. Welcome aboard, and let's get out here if we can, Clef greeted her. Oh, Brashen, Althea said shudderingly into his chest. She lifted her face to look at him and then has to break it up and say, okay, Wintrow's plan. If we can break free, run north for Divvy Town, harbor's defensible, we can hold out there until Kennit's other ships can come for us, like with messages, you know?
Right.
She broke her flow of words suddenly. She stared at Kennit's still body, and Brashen whispers to her, he's dead. He died in Paragon's arms. He held her, wishing there were time for them, but there was not. Death threatened all around them. Break free, he muttered. How? And then Paragon turns to look at them, and he says, once I promised not to kill you. I was mad, and you knew it. And still you believed in me. I'm whole now. Now I make you both a new promise. I'll do all I can to keep you alive. So hopefully that restores a little bit of Brashen's trust in Paragon, that he can see one, and that he says that he's whole, and that he's promising to do his best to keep them alive, not that he won't kill them.
Yes, but I think that it's a little bit more reassuring now, not because it's, I promise I won't murder you. It's, I'm going to try to get us out of here alive. Yeah. And you may die in the process, but I'm willing to try anything to get us out.
Yep.
And so I think that's pretty big and a really big development for Paragon. And then also I think their relationship as well. It's like an acknowledgement of what has happened, right? So
right, yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's so interesting to have Brashen's point of view for this, and just see that like Althea's holding him tighter when he mentions that Kennit is dead, and he wishes they had time alone, but they don't. And I just find the whole thing really interesting because we know that Brashen doesn't know anything, and
Right.
it's easy to
Yeah.
forget,
Hmm.
but it is really interesting to see his reaction to her without knowing anything, and she's just very glad to be with him in
Yeah.
this moment.
Yeah. All that Brashen knows is that he tried to sink Paragon, almost succeeded, and kept Althea hostage. That's
Right.
basically it.
Exactly.
Then we switch over to Malta's point of view, and she hears Wintrow speak up and says, "Take them up." So he wants to save the sinking Jamaillian nobles. He doesn't want to risk any of their ships or any of their people, but he says, "Throw them a line." So eventually, they kind of haul them all up onto the deck. Of course, it's not as easy as that, and chaos kind of breaks them out, and some of them are trying to stop the approaching Jamaillian fleet, and no one's paying attention. And
Right. And not only that, but also the Jamaillian nobles that are on that ship are in chaos trying to get on the boat to
right, they
get
want to be saved.
exactly. So it's not just a simple little thing, but it is kind of shocking to everyone else that Wintrow's doing this.
Yeah. And eventually they do stand before the satrap, a dozen men that he knew by name, men he had dined with, men he had trusted. Malta gave him credit for his small courage. He stood face to face with them. Some met his gaze steadily, but most stared at their feet or off to the horizon. When he spoke, it was the last word Malta had expected to hear from him. "Why?" he asked. He looked at each in turn. Malta, still holding the rag to his belly, could feel that he trembled slightly. She glanced up at his face and saw a truth that perhaps no one else did. He was hurt by their treachery, by their betrayal. "Did you hate me that much to seek my death by treachery?" The one he had called Lord Kriath lifted grey eyes to stare at him. "Look at you," he growled. "You're weak and foolish. You think of nothing except yourself. You've plundered the treasury and let the city go to ruin. What else could we do but kill you? You were never a true satrap." Satrap Cosgo met the man's eyes squarely. "You have been my trusted advisor since I was 15 years old," he returned gravely. "I listened to you, Kriath. Ferdio, you were Ministry of the Treasury. Peton, Creo, did you not offer me counsels as well? Counsels I always heeded, despite what some of my companions said, for I wanted you to think well of me. That was my mistake, I see. I measured myself by how sweetly you complimented me. I am what you taught me to be, gentlemen. Or I was." He stuck out his jaw. "A time out in the world among true men has been very enlightening. I am no longer the boy you manipulated and betrayed, my lords, as you will come to discover." As if he had the authority, he instructed Jola, "Secure them below. They need not be too comfortable."
Before we get on to Wintrow's objection of that, um, I think this scene touched me more and made me feel worse for the satrap than any other scene has so far. Um, because it really highlights like these men that hate him so much and think he's such a terrible ruler. It was their job to make him a good one.
Right, right.
Like
Yeah.
the reason he's so bad is because he's what they made him to be. And they're angry that he's exactly the way they turned him, like they taught him to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it is sort of an injustice. And I do feel bad for the satrap here because they really set him up to fail. I mean, sure, it's hard to go against a noble, and I'm sure you wouldn't want to get on his bad side for sure. So you'd think you had to butter him up. But you'd have to also realize that he was a child and he was doing what you said.
At 11, they were giving him wines and women and drugs, basically, to get on his good side and say that he was so smart and everything, and then gave him counsels and then said, "Yeah, that's a great idea, satrap. I'm sure you implemented that yourself."
Yeah.
To their counsels,
Yeah,
and then
it's
are
just
mad at the results.
it's annoying because I'm sure as soon as somebody else was ever able to do it better, they started losing out and so they're mad. But well, how else was he supposed to be? What was supposed to be the outcome of them doing that to him at 15? And I think that's a really interesting case study too, because Satrap is someone who, like, Kennit is a bad person. Like, he's not exactly the hero in this. I would call him a villain. I consider him to be one of the villains personally. But I think it's so interesting to get this little tidbit of like, this isn't just advisors who loved his father and wish he would have been his father. These are his advisors
Yeah.
that told him what to do that are going against him. And I think something about that is just kind of really sad.
Yeah. And
And
of course, it's still Cosgo, so he's a little bit dramatic of like, my
Right.
time out in the world has hardened me and shown me what true men are.
I'm a real man now.
Yeah.
I've talked to real men. No, there's definitely theatrics to it, but I think it did, in a way, help to really humanize an otherwise cartoonish character.
Yeah.
Because
yeah, for sure.
you really do get that, because occasionally we do get serious glimpses from Cosgo, and you can kind of feel bad for him because
A couple chapters ago when he
Yeah.
spoke to Malta about his childhood.
yeah, and I think also if you think about it, I mean, yeah, he's annoying and spoiled, but he doesn't know anything else. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's really
Malta's
annoying.
right. He is a child, you know?
Yeah. Nobody taught him better. And so it's like annoying to watch him do all these horrible things, but also it doesn't feel as bad as someone like Kennit doing the terrible things, because
Right.
I genuinely don't think any of the bad things the Satrap does comes from a place of malice most of the time.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I think it genuinely comes from the fact that he has a childlike view of how things are, and he doesn't quite grasp real consequences because he's never had one. So,
yeah.
like, what he did to Cyrilla is awful, and the way he treated her and had her horribly brutalized for fun, horrible, should not be forgiven. But I mean, I don't even think that was done with knowledge of exactly what that meant to a real person.
No.
I
Yeah. It's just
a plaything that he was throwing away. It wasn't a human being, and he didn't grasp what it would mean to hurt like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Interesting. Just very interesting to think about with this character.
Yeah. So he tries to command Jola, secure them below. And Wintrow comes back on scene. He's like, no. Time to the mast. You know, we want them to be seen. Maybe the people on the other ships will see them as captives and be hesitant to shoot arrows over here because that's, all their nobles. And then he spared a look for his sister, but she scarcely recognized him. Grief had set lines in his face and chilled his eyes. He tried to soften his voice, but his words still sounded like a command. He directs Malta and Rain, and of course the satrap, down to the captain's stateroom.
So I think we're actually in Malta's point of view.
Yeah, I said that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I thought we said Wintrow's. So
No. We're
Yeah.
in Malta's point of view.
yeah. But I mean, it is a little crazy. He's not apologizing for overriding Satrap, but he is making good commands, as far as like they make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of feels not very Wintrow, though, to use live humans as a shield and or bait. So
yeah, Malta's kind of reflecting on that too, thinking, this was war, she told herself harshly. He did what he did to try to save them all. If the nobles died, it would be because their own men fired on them. Death was a risk they had chosen when they plotted against the satrap. That did not mean she took any satisfaction in it. And then bitterly she reflected that scores of Bingtown folk, slaves, and simple tradesmen as well as traders, had died for their ambitions.
Right. And I think this is really interesting to get Malta's point of view, because I think she's somebody who understands this part of Wintrow in a way that like Althea never could. I think it's kind of the haven in them almost. I mean, it is a Vestrit trait as well to do anything to survive, but I think Malta has a better grasp on the gray area of morality.
Yeah.
And in this excuse of, well, you know what? He is just it's war. He's doing what he has to survive. And honestly, it would be their own fault if they died. It's not anything to do with my brother. I think is really interesting because it's kind of an acceptance that we haven't really seen other people give to Wintrow when Wintrow makes choices. And this one is kind of a darker gray than most choices that he makes. So I don't know. I just find that really...
Well, I also want to refute what you said that it's not very Wintrow, because I
Okay.
think you're comparing him to book one Wintrow,
Sure.
and that's not Wintrow anymore. He's had a year of being a slave, of being tattooed, of being under
Yeah.
Kennit's tutelage. He has grown as a person as well and changed his characters. So I think that is in line with what he's doing, you know? He did save the men,
Yeah.
but he's going to leave them on deck because it might dissuade arrows to save other of his crew, you know?
Yeah. I guess, I don't know. Maybe I still feel like that doesn't feel like him because I do still kind of hold him as the boy priest in
Yeah.
my mind, even though he has changed a little bit over the last few chapters at least. I mean, well, obviously the whole series, but like more so in the last few chapters. I don't know. Maybe you're right.
Well, we switch over to Althea's point of view, who is in the crow's nest of Paragon, and she climbed up there. You know, she told Brashen she wanted to look out for the fleet, see what they were doing, but she wanted to escape. She wanted to escape Brashen's possessive hug and Paragon's piercing blue Kennit's eyes. So that combination is something that she just needed to run away from. Brashen had not noticed. He had put Samoy to assembling Paragon's reduced crew into defense, and it had wrung her heart to see how many sailors had perished, and she feels weirdly guilty, the survivor's guilt, that she had escaped unscathed from that disaster.
And not even just the people who didn't make it are making her feel guilty, but also Amber having a scalded face and burnt bits of her body, and Clef as well having burns. It's just a reminder that they went through something horrific that she did not.
Yep. From her vantage, she's looking down on everything here. The Jamaillian fleet that could still function seemed intent on continuing the battle, and as far as she could see, there was no easy escape. The Motley had rammed a ship that had tried to head her off, and they were hopelessly tangled together. And the Marietta could have slipped through and escaped, but Sorkor held her back, trying to aid the Motley. Flight after flight of arrows soared from her deck, picking off the Jamaillian sailors, while her own small catapult launched stones at the surrounding ships in a vain effort to keep them back. It was a very uneven contest, and it was growing worse. And now that Vivacia and Paragon were on the move, only their desire to keep their catapults at a useful range kept the Jamaillian ships from hemming in the two live ships completely. So they don't want to get close to the live ships, and that's the only reason that the live ships have a chance to escape.
Right.
And Motley is tied up, and Sorkor is too nice for a cutthroat pirate.
Yeah, because he's helping the Motley. It's not even about the Vivacia and Paragon at all either, which I think is really interesting because they don't know that Kennit has died.
Yeah.
So I guess he probably is trusting that Kennit would be able to get the other two ships out.
Right, yeah. So Paragon was keeping some of the ships at bay while the lingering effects of the earlier serpent attacks delayed others. And once in a while, Althea will see like a crash of a sail and kind of surmise that the serpent spittle from the earlier attacks finally ate through a mast or something like that. So there's devastation on all sides, but it's still very, very, very bad for the surviving 4 ships here.
Yes. And on top of that, Althea doesn't really see a
The
future,
long-term hope?
a future where everybody survives anyway, because even if they get out and go to Divvytown, as long as the satrap is alive, the Jamaillian fleet is going to come after him, and they're going to want to kill all the witnesses. And she doesn't think they would not stoop low enough to kill an entire town just to get rid of the evidence. So even if they get to Divvytown, they're still in danger, and there's still a chance that everyone dies, and it's just on land instead.
So there were some men moving Kennit's body on the deck. His mother accompanied him, and Etta stayed by the figurehead, looking out over the water. Perhaps she too sensed that more of Kennit remained with the figurehead than in the lolling body. Kennit was a part of Paragon now. He had died on Paragon's deck, and the ship had welcomed him. She still had not grasped why. Best come down, Amber says. Brashen is sure a rock is going to come by and carry you off with it. So Brashen had already, Paragon had already taken a solid hit or two, and they're kind of worried about that. And Brashen is worried for Althea, of course.
Right. And I think also just a quick backstep, Althea saying that she can't understand why Paragon took Kennit. Althea does not know.
That the old woman is Kennet's mother.
Yes,
Right.
and also doesn't know that Paragon is Kennit's ship, I believe.
Yes.
Like, she doesn't know he's a Ludluck. She
Correct.
doesn't. So it really is a mystery to her right now
Yeah.
why this is happening. And she's not really in the place to think it through. This is not the moment to have a time to think, really. And so when Amber says, let's go, and she's starting to go down, Amber mentions that she also will have to go down because Kyle is making a fuss.
Yeah, and Althea's like, Kyle? Didn't Brashen tell you? Kennet's mother brought him on board with her. Evidently, Kennit had stashed him on Key Island. No, we haven't had much time to talk. Now, there was an understatement. Kennet's mother? Key Island? She had thought that nothing could further complicate this day. She had been wrong. They're Kyle Haven. She has to confront everything now.
Yep.
So Kyle is confronting Kennet's dead body, saying, throw it over the side. He's a murderer, thieving cutthroat. He's stammering. Deserved to die. Feed him to the serpents as he fed my crew to the serpents. And Kennet's mother is standing there looking stricken, still clutching her dead son's hand. Althea crosses over and says, let her pass by, Kyle. Tormenting her won't change a thing that Kennit did. As she spoke the words, she suddenly knew the truth of them. She looked impassively at Kennet's dead face. He was beyond her vengeance now, and she would not take out her bitterness on this grieving old woman. Kyle, however, was not out of her reach. She had waited long for this confrontation. His arrogance and selfishness had nearly destroyed her life. Nevertheless, as he turned to stare at her, her hatred melted into horror. His angry confidence had vanished the moment she challenged him. His hands jerked spasmodically as he glared at her without comprehension. What? He demanded curiously. Who? Althea Vestrit, she said quietly. She stared at him.
And Kyle is not what she remembers him to be.
No.
Even though up until this point he obviously was showing signs of being a little bit different, I think really looking at him is what it takes to realize he is not the same Kyle. She notes that he looks like a man who is taken a bad beating.
Multiple and many beatings, she says. Missing teeth, scars lining his face, beatings around the head have left him stammering and shaking as if he's like an old man.
Yeah. And he has a lot of gray streaking through his unkept hair, and it hasn't been a long enough time for gray. Robin Hobb really likes to do this thing where people get head wounds and then get gray hair. Is that a real thing that happens to people?
I would assume so, yeah.
Okay. It just seems, I don't know, Fitz. It happens to Fitz, and then other, I don't know. I just see gray hair, something happening as you age, but maybe that's just my luck.
So Amber is standing behind Althea and speaks up, saying, let it go, Kyle. He's dead. It doesn't matter anymore. You're safe now.
And this is the same tone Amber used whenever she would try to calm down Paragon's tantrums.
Yeah.
Althea notes. And it doesn't really work because Kyle is outraged by when she says it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Doesn't matter. Does matter. Look at me. Damn mess. Your fault, he suddenly declared, pointing at Althea with a shaky, crooked finger. His twisted hands made her feel faint to look at him. They bore the marks of systematic breaking. Your fault. You unnatural. Want to be a man. Shamed the family. Made the ship hate me. Your fault. Your fault. Althea scarcely heard his words. She saw instead how he struggled to find words and forced them from his mouth. Kyle took a great breath, his face mottling red with his effort. I curse you! Die on this mad ship! Curse you with bad luck! Dead man on board, you'll die on this deck! Mark that! I curse you! All! I curse you! He threw wide his shaky hands and saliva flew from his lips. Althea staring at him unspeaking. The true curse was that he was Keffria's husband, the father of Wintrow, Malta, and Selden. It was her duty to restore him to them. The thought made her blood cold. Had not Malta suffered enough? She had idealized this man. Must she return this bitter wreckage to her sister's side?
Yeah, this is heartbreaking on a lot of levels.
Yeah. Kyle has been tortured
Yeah.
for like a whole year.
Yeah.
Almost half a year, probably.
Yeah. I mean, things were pretty bad when Wintrow left Kyle. When Kyle left Wintrow, rather. He was already pretty paranoid and had taken quite a bad beating from.
Broken ribs, some
Yeah.
marks on his face. Yeah.
But it's pretty clear that, I can't think
Either
of their name,
Sayla, Dedge, or Ankle,
or all
or
three
all three,
had.
systematically broke his fingers, beat him more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Starved
Really,
him, basically.
and even if it wasn't them doing that to him, even if this is just remnants from the fight, I mean, he was, like, best case scenario, chained up in a dark dungeon for 6 months and fed irregularly. So, like, even if he wasn't being beaten in that dungeon, he wasn't being fed regularly. Kennit said to forget his meals every once in a while. I
Yeah.
mean,
Just keep him alive.
yeah. And it's not like he had somebody to talk to, and that doesn't do well for the human brain. So,
Yeah.
yeah, this is really sad. And, honestly, a little cold of Althea to be like, man, don't my sister and Malta have it bad enough?
Right. Yeah.
Like that's her first thought, is not like poor Kyle, like poor my family that has to deal with him now. That's rough. That's not fair. She does, I think, feel bad for him, but I don't know. It's really interesting that even in this moment, she's just kind of like, man, that's rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I do feel bad for Kyle, obviously. Like, I don't think anybody deserves that. And
No.
honestly, we've talked about, like, while Kyle was not a good person and made his own son a slave and made a lot of awful choices and had horrible views on women, he was just trying to help his family the best way he knew how.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
ultimately, like, sure, he wasn't a good person and I don't agree with his methods. However, he wasn't like doing this for fun. He wasn't making his son a slave for fun. It wasn't a fun thing for him. He just thought that
He
had
didn't
to happen.
want to be in the slave trade, I don't think.
No, I think he
He
just
wanted
knew
to
it would
trade up
make
the
money.
Rainwild River and be a respectable old trader
Yes.
because he wanted power, but still.
Yeah, he was trying to do what he knew would make money quick.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, that is become a slaver. He also was clearly influenced by his first mate and second mate, who were in that business previously.
Mostly the second mate.
Yeah, you're right. The second mate mostly. Either way, he was clearly influenced by that. And I don't know, it's not great. Like, I mean, I don't think he's a good person, but I don't think he's like Kennit levels of evil.
No.
And
no.
I don't think even Kennit would deserve that. Like, I don't think anybody deserves to be treated like that. It's just horrible.
It's very sad. And all that Althea can really drum up is to say, Kyle, let him by for the sake of his mother's grief. Let him pass. Whilst Kyle stared at her in slow comprehension, the men slipped past with Kennet's body. Mother followed, and Edda was beside her now. For an instant, her eyes met Althea's. There were no words for what passed between them. Thank you. The words were stiff and resentful. Hatred still burned in Edda's eyes, but the hatred was not for Althea. It was for the shameful truth that tormented both of them. Althea turned aside from that searing knowledge. Kennit had raped her. Edda knew, and the admission was a stake in the heart of her memories of him. Neither woman could escape what he had done to them. Althea looked away only to have her eyes fall on Kyle. Still muttering and swinging feeble fists in his display of anger, he gestured wildly as he shuffled away from them. His left foot turned out awkwardly. Amber spoke up quietly, saying, At night in our room, you used to say you longed to meet him just one more time, just so you could confront him with what you did, or what he did. He stole my ship from me. He ruined my dreams. Althea could not look away from the lurching figure. Saw save us all. Cheated of vengeance twice in one day, she observed in a shaky voice. Amber gave her a surprised look. Is that truly how you feel? No, it isn't at all. Grateful. For my life. For my intact body. For a man like Brashen in my life. Saw's breath, Amber. I have nothing to complain about. She looked up suddenly as if waking from a nightmare. We've got to survive this, Amber. We have to. I have a life to live. Each of us does, Amber replied, and a death to die as well. So I don't like this characterization at all. This end part of like, oh, talk to Amber, and then all of a sudden you have a better outlook on life. Althea doesn't feel like that. We're told before that she doesn't feel like she has nothing to complain about and a life looking forward to live. And then after this, it's not like that either. She's also still shamed and yes, she's looking forward to her life, but she doesn't know how to move on yet. And she still has things to complain about. And obviously.
Right.
So this doesn't make sense to me. And I don't like this passage. I don't like this paragraph. I would like it if half of it was there. Like grateful for my life, for my intact body, for a man like Brashen in my life. Stop it there. Like, I guess we all have to live or like look forward to life.
Yeah,
now
or maybe we've got to survive this.
Yeah, and that's it. You know, like we've got to survive this. That would be a decent message to me from Althea's point of view, because that's what she's been going through. Like, we've got to survive this. She's been holding on to her anger to get through these moments.
Yeah.
She can't just all of a sudden wake up from a nightmare, let it go, and be like, I have nothing to complain about.
Seeing how bad it could be with Kyle.
Yeah.
Man, I actually don't have anything to complain about.
I don't know. I don't like this. It's really weird to me.
Yeah, I guess I also don't love the whole, like, I have nothing to complain about. We've got to live. It does feel kind of like too gung-ho. I guess in my mind, though, I do wonder if part of this is sort of a realization or maybe acceptance of the fact that things aren't going to go her way. There is never going to be a confrontation between Kennit or Kyle.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't get that confrontation. She just never will.
So she finally lets go of that revenge and that vengeance drive.
Yeah. I think maybe I read it more as that. And then also, I'm wondering if there is some healing being away from Vivacia.
True.
Because there isn't that reminder of the lack of bond that once was.
That could be.
Because we know that whenever people are away from their bonded ship, that bond is a lot fainter, and also just in general, you can think clearer, I think is how Wintrow phrases it, that like you can think more for yourself and less influenced by the ship. And so maybe there's part of that. Maybe she's a little bit influenced by Paragon here of this
just
gung-ho attitude. I don't know if that helps.
I like that thought and that not excuses, but the reasons that you're presenting there. But just the descriptor of she looked up suddenly as if waking from a nightmare. It's not like she's trying to put a brave face on anything. It's straight up saying, this is an epiphany to me. I have nothing to complain about. I'm looking forward to my life.
Yeah.
And it feels so sudden if it's healing as like a distance from Vivacia. I don't know. I'm
choosing to kind of ignore parts of it to fit my personal narrative. So
I like those reasons that you presented. I just still can't really make it fit and jive with the whole
looking up. It's not perfect, but
well, Amber has the weird thing of like, each of us has a life to live and a death to die. So we don't know. The reader doesn't know if they're all going to die or not.
Right. We're all going to die.
Yeah.
Someday. Probably slowly.
And we switch over to Wintrow's point of view, and he's all in his own head about, I don't know what to do.
So now it's my turn to be frustrated. I don't love this section that's coming up. Yeah. So we'll get there. But yeah, Wintrow is here. He is basically saying, "What would Kennit do?" WWKD.
Yeah. What would Kennit do now? He's muttering. And he's like looking around and seeing like, oh, I don't know what to do. I've already taken up the sinking sailors, and Kennit would have called that weakness. Whatever, I already did it, but now how do I get out of here? Kennit would know how to get out of here. But Kennit's dead, and Etta set off to mourn him. Althea had crossed the Paragon. I'm alone now. I've taken command of Vivacia because I can't tolerate Jola captaining her. And now that I have her, I'm afraid that I'm going to lose her in all the hands. So his mind is kind of flying back to the first time he took control of Vivacia during the storm after the uprising of the slaves on Vivacia. And now he's stepping up to fill Kennit's place in the midst of battle.
Right. And it feels even worse because he doesn't feel like he can fill Kennit's shoes. And once again, he asks, what would Kennit do?
And Vivacia's like, Kennit's dead. You are alive. Wintrow Vestrit, it is up to you. Save us both.
And I think this is what I have trouble with. I don't love that Wintrow wants to be like Kennit. And I get, obviously, Kennit is a good captain. We've talked about duality of man, blah, blah, blah. He was a good Kennit, and Wintrow wants to be able to lead and get them out of a situation that seems impossible the way Kennit seemed to be able to. However, I just don't love this idolization of Kennit. I don't love that Kennit's dead now and I need to fill his shoes and I need to be just like him and I want to make the decisions that Kennit would make. I like, he just had that whole thing a few chapters ago about talking about the struggle of if him admitting what Kennit has done to Althea was really hard for him because it meant that he was bad too in his mind because he sided with Kennit. And so that was one of his struggles, was he didn't want to admit that he made bad choices and he didn't want to like admit he's ignoring the bad in Kennit. And then here he is less than 24 hours later in book time being like, oh, I want to be just like Kennit. What can I do to be more like Kennit?
I disagree with that.
Okay.
I don't think saying what would Kennit do now is like, I want to be like Kennit. It's Kennit. It's the first part you said. Kennit is a great captain. Kennit would know how to get us out of this situation. So what do I have to do as a captain to get us out of this situation? I don't think it's like I idolize Kennit in all aspects. You know, he's my martyr. I don't think it's like that kind of thing.
I don't know. I guess the way I'm reading it, gives the vibe of like, I wish I could be just like Kennit in this moment. And therefore it like is as though like he wishes he could be more like Kennit, period. I don't know. Maybe he was right. Maybe him aligning himself with Kennit does make him a bad person to me morally. And I don't know. It's just that I think also it's frustrating because he's seen the miracles Kennit has done and known that they aren't actual miracles. Like he knows.
But he's also seen him get out of difficult situations without them being called miracles.
That's fair. I don't know. It just, whatever.
Yeah.
But I also kind of find it odd that Vivacia here is like, he's dead. Like, it's you, Wintrow, instead of being like, yeah, I miss Kennit too or something. Like, it felt like, if anything,
snap out of it, Wintrow. That's what they're there for, you know?
Yeah, I guess.
There's no babying between that bond. They've been through some stuff together. I do want to point out that at Wintrow's command, Jola's chaining up the nobles to the mast, and Wintrow says he feels queasy about that.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, he's not, trying to be a hardened pirate now and treating them as callously as possible. He's
right
doing it against his better judgment because it is the right choice for now.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
So he is trying to step up, fulfill the role of captain, trying to step up into Kennit's place. And Vivacia's like, you aren't Kennit. You have to be Wintrow Vestrit, the captain of Vivacia. Get us through this. And now he's thinking, oh, I'm paralyzed as death is closing in. Yeah. What would Kennit do? Stop that. You are not Kennit. You cannot command as he did. You must command as Wintrow Vestrit. You say you fear to fail. What have you told Etta? So often it rings in my bones. When you fear to fail, you fear something that has not yet happened. You predict your own failure, and by inaction, lock yourself into it. Was not that what you told her? 100 times, he returned, almost smiling, in the days when she would not even try to read, and other times. And he took a breath and centered himself. He scanned the battle again. His oldest training came suddenly to the fore. He drew another deep breath. When he let it out, he sent doubt with the spent air. He suddenly saw the battle as if it were one of Edda's board games. In conflict, there is weakness. That is where we will break through. He pointed toward the Marietta and the Motley, already locked in a struggle with the Jamaillian ships. Several others were moving to join the battle. There? Vivacia asked, suddenly doubtful. There. And we do our best to free them with us. Jola, bring us about. Archers to the ready. We're leaving. It was not what they expected, but once he had realized he could not forsake his friends, the decision was simple. So that's kind of his decision there.
Yeah.
He brings back his centering meditation kind of training and says, well, I can't leave my friends. That's what I would do.
Yeah. And you know what? I do appreciate this. I do think this is not a Kennit move. Kennit would have left them if that meant that he could get away.
If Kennit was on the Marietta, he'd already be gone.
Yep. So as mad as I was just a second ago at him being like, what would Kennit do? I wish I was Kennit. I want to be more like Kennit.
He's not.
He's not. He isn't Kennit. And I think he will not ever be. But Kennit definitely has changed him in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
And I think trained him and affected the way he will lead moving forward. I mean, old Wintrow would not have even thought to put those people up as a shield, right?
Right.
Like it just wouldn't have. He's queasy about doing it, but he also recognizes the advantage there is to doing it.
Yeah,
and
old
I think
Wintrow would not be able to lead in the Pirate Isles at all.
No. Yeah, and I think it goes back to what I said about Malta's assessment of the situation of just, this situation is a morally gray spot, and Wintrow doesn't super do well with morally gray. However, I think because of Kennit's teaching of him and training him, he does have more confidence in doing something morally gray instead of worrying about what that means to Saw and spending too much time wishing the problem would be different and therefore doing nothing.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot, how Wintrow doesn't do a lot of, he doesn't take a lot of action very quickly. And here it does take Vivacia to snap him out of it, right? To center himself. But he is decisive.
Yeah. And ultimately he does make decisions. He does.
And instantly when he had to spring in to take command of Vivacia to save Kennit, he instantly took command and made decisions. And he has learned a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even too, when Vivacia goes, wait, really? That's what you're going to do? After telling him, you have to be confident. You're not Kennit. You do your own thing. He's like, all right, I'm doing my own thing. She's like, really?
Yeah, but what would Kennit do?
Yeah, but actually, let's think about maybe go back to that Kennit question. I think, no, he, even in the face of that, he's like, that's what I'm going to do. He's sure of it because he's now made up his mind. And I think that's something that is very Wintrow of once he has made up his mind, he does a thing. He believes in it. He doesn't care what other people think, which is a pretty good quality to have as a leader, I think, to not be shaken by other people's worries and to trust your own instincts.
Yeah.
And
And for a blessing, the wind was with them, and he looks over and sees Paragon following, and Trell was at the helm. So Brashen is following there, and that simple act of confidence restored Wintrow's faith in himself. So they're going to basically charge at the closing circle and make them give way because Wizardwood and live ships are scary.
Yeah.
So there's a smaller Jamaillian ship moving in to flank them. They shoot some arrows and miss most people. Another arrow strikes Vivacia's shoulder, rebounds harmlessly, but she's shrieking her outrage, a cry as shrill as a serpent's. Wizardwood feared no ordinary arrow. Pitch pots and flames would be another matter, but Wintrow judged correctly that they would fear to use them in such crowded circumstance.
Also, I want to mention that the archers on the other ships did falter when they heard the screams of the Jamaillian captives.
Yes.
However, that did not stop them for long, and they did continue.
Mm-hmm.
So, unfortunately, the Jamaillians on top of the ship are not going to be saved by simply being seen.
So Vivacia's archers returned that volley with far greater accuracy. Just as he thought they had escaped unscathed, a man fell from the rigging. The arrow had pierced his throat. Genghis had died soundlessly. The old man had been one of Kennit's original crew. As his body struck the deck, Vivacia screamed. It was not a woman's cry, but the rising shriek of an outraged dragon. The anger that surged up from her invaded Wintrow as well. An answering roar came from Paragon, echoed by a shrill trumpeting from the White Serpent.
And again, I think this reminds us that Vivacia is not fully human, because this is very similar to the response when one of the serpent tangle had been attacked.
Yes.
All of them became angry. And so it's really interesting to see that blend with Vivacia, where her tangle has been attacked, one of her own has been killed, and that's
good call
Genghis.
Out. Yeah. Poor Genghis. Man.
I know.
Just the gossip, the old man gossip that was there with us in the first chapter of this series.
He's the one who went to Other Island.
Yep.
Yeah. And he's gone now, along with Kennit. So sad. But yeah, I think that was a really interesting thing to see mimicked here, that, you know, she's seeing him as one of her own, the same way the Tangle reacted to when one of their own was attacked.
So a large ship is moving steadily to cut them off, basically playing chicken with them, trying to force them back into the circle of the closing fleet. Wintrow's like, well, Vivacia, it's up to you. Cut her as close as you can. And Vivacia's racing past virtually under his bow, because the Jamaillian ship finally is like, okay, cut the slack. We can't keep going, otherwise we'll run into them. And Vivacia just does not care and keeps going. Now the embattled motley was right before them. One of her brightly colored sails was down and drooping uselessly. The crew had cleared most of her deck of boarders, but the two ships were still both grappled and tangled. Vivacia bore down on them, screaming like a dragon, archers ready. The Marietta moved off to allow them room. Sorkor's supply of both arrows and shot were probably nearly spent. Look at that, Wintrow exclaimed suddenly. The White Serpent had surfaced by the Jamaillian ship that was locked with the motley. As if it knew their plans, it roared and then opened wide its jaws to spray the deck with venom. And then it disappears and then resurfaces to spray it once again, to push the ship, the Jamaillian ship, and basically start to separate the two ships. And the men in the rigging chop away the rest of the rigging that was tangled, and the Jamaillian ship and motley are free.
And the pirates on the motley gave an uneven cheer.
Yes. The serpent rose once more to spray the other ship with venom. A lone archer, screaming with the pain of his scalds, let fly a single arrow. It struck the White Serpent just behind the angle of his jaw. The shaft plunged out of sight, and the serpent screamed in agony. It whipped its head about wildly as if sought to dislodge the arrow, but it was dying. Vivacia gave a cry of fury and horror. Paragon suddenly swept past them. With complete disregard for the figurehead, the ship rammed the Jamaillian craft. As his bow caught the other vessel amidships, Paragon screamed in wordless fury. He seized the ship's railing and tore it loose. Wintrow had never thought to gauge the strength of a live ship's figurehead. Before his eyes, an enraged Paragon used the ship's railing as a club to batter at the hapless vessel. Splinters flew at every blow. Men fled, seeking shelter from the flying pieces of wood. When the railing gave way, he snatched the war axe from his belt. He wielded it two-handed. With every crushing stroke, Paragon roared. Deck planks gave way, and then he reached overhead to tear at canvas and rigging. With his axe in his hands, he reduced the ship to wreckage before Wintrow's disbelieving eyes. On Paragon's deck, his own crew darted for cover, shouting with terror.
Yeah, that'd be a little scary.
So Paragon is Fitz. He goes into a battle rage here.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure he did that himself. He aimed himself over to
Oh,
ram
yeah.
them. I don't think that was done by his crew.
Amber, oh, it's not a real weapon. They just colored it to look like an axe.
Uh-huh. Still a giant chunk of wood, I guess.
Yeah, wood that doesn't age or break or anything.
Yeah, harder
Magic
than
wood.
yeah. Yeah, not great. But hey, I guess everybody always said that Paragon should have a weapon.
Yeah, I guess. Man. Yeah, so everything, I don't know. This sequence of events feels, it's obviously written with loss built in, but it feels easy for them because it ties up loose ends
Mm-hmm.
and they just, I don't know, escape. I liked last chapter a lot. This chapter, there's a few, like it feels like it's written to get to the next scene and these things needed to happen. It's just not that they're super realistic that they would happen.
Yeah, that's fair. It's very and then everyone clapped.
Yeah, kind of.
And it is so easy to get through them after all of that hard challenge, like
Right.
they suffered so much for what? But
Yeah,
I don't know. But they have been free. They've been cleared, and Paragon has finished his rampage of the other boat.
Well, not really.
Kind of.
Not yet. He's still raging and not listening to anybody. He's sitting there. Other Jamaillian ships had moved back defensively,
yes.
Obviously, because they're like, this guy's terrifying.
And he keeps throwing chunks of wreckage at them.
Yeah. In their haste to be out of his range, one Jamaillian ship rammed another. They drifted in a circle, rigging tangled. Paragon's wild attack had broken an opening for them. Marietta and Motley sweep through that opening, but Althea's like, small use it would do for us because Paragon is just still raging. We're in Althea's point of view now as she sees Brashen trying to yell at Paragon, but Paragon is ignoring him. And Vivacia sweeping past into the opening, yelling, "Follow, follow!" But he appeared not to hear Vivacia either. His sails strained to push him on, but he caught hold of the Jamaillian ship with one hand and kept punishing it with the other. So he's preventing the sails from pushing him out of range of this Jamaillian ship and basically keeping himself anchored so he can destroy this ship.
Right. And as he's doing that, Kyle comes out from hiding below deck, and he is so gleeful that they're all going to die here.
Yeah. Die here, die as you all deserve. Every one of you serves you right. You brought his body on board. We'll take it to the bottom with us. And as all of this is happening, the Jamaillian ships are continuing to throw rocks now because Paragon is stationary. So Althea is like, if one hits the rudder, we're actually dead in the water. Right. And we will die here.
Then we have Etta, who was close to Mother, coming down probably to
reappears,
to attack Kyle with what he's saying. Potentially, it's not really clear. Etta had been closeted with Mother. Now she appeared and made a determined rush down the deck. As she ran, a small ship swept past, the same one that had harried Vivacia earlier. Which, get down, Althea cries as a row of archer lets fly. Etta heeded her. Kyle did not. So, unclear if Etta was about to attack Kyle.
I think she was rushing for the figurehead the whole time. I think it was just going to be, those were the only two people who were still on deck standing up kind of thing.
Sure.
And that's why Althea made a mention of Etta was rushing.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, no. So Etta is going potentially towards Paragon, I guess, is heading that direction. But when she sees the archers, and warns everybody, Kyle, I don't know if he even had time to register because it seems like he's
slower in comprehension, slow to react now.
And so he does not make it.
He fell jerking with 2 arrows through his body. Etta did not give him a glance. She picked herself up and ran. And when she reached the foredeck, she screamed her words with the force of a sudden cold wind. "Faithless ship! Bear us away, or Kennit's child will die unborn, a child he bid me name Paragon." The figurehead twisted back to look at her. His wide blue eyes shone with madness. He stared at her, and a sudden silence fell. In one hand, he gripped a timber from the shattered ship. He lifted it high over his head and then flung it into the rigging of an approaching Jamaillian ship. He thrust his axe back into its harness. At last, he seized the battered hulk in both hands and pushed savagely free of it. The impetus aimed them towards the closing gap and thrust the wreckage into the path of 2 other ships. Suddenly unimpeded, his full sails sent him shooting forward. They were in clear water. So Edda kind of springs them from Paragon's madness, reminding Paragon that his family member is going to be born, and only if he can get them away.
Right. If they don't survive, neither does baby Paragon.
Yeah.
And that is the only thing that can reach him. You know, it works. That gets him to not necessarily calm down, but to
have a new mission, have a new focus.
Yes.
And it also reminds the readers that Paragon isn't a whole live ship, goody two shoes, everything's dandy now.
Yes.
He's still lived with madness forever. He still has that kind of insanity on him, that bloodlust at certain times. He's going to be moody forevermore. And we get that in Rainwild Chronicles because Brashen and Althea talk about that.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, that's kind of important to show because I think it's good.
It's not a magic fix.
He's not cured. He's Paragon. And he has always been Paragon. There's just better understanding of that now and a little bit more ways to help him fight the urges that he has.
Yeah.
But yeah, in this moment, just thinking about the future of Bloodlux is what gets him to go.
How crazy is Paragon right at the end here? He like dual wields his axe and a timber from another ship, looks at Edda, throws the timber into the sails of one approaching ship, and then shoves the wreckage into 2 others and like, fine.
Yeah, fine, all right,
I'll
done.
just take 3 more ships out almost as we go.
Like, all right, I guess I'm done. Yeah, no, it's pretty cool that he's capable of doing that, especially because as far as we know, he did not fight with Ygritte. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think...
Yeah, I think he refused. Probably.
Yeah, and also... Ygritte probably pretty quickly chopped his eyes. I don't think he sailed because he continued to sail on Paragon with no eyes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just kind of crazy to me that I don't think he has fought before. I don't think he's ever been used to fight, but he has the knowledge of his forebears and whoever died on his ship to know how to fight and, apparently has really good aim. So... He moves forward, and like a miracle from Saw, Althea says, they are in open waters and on their way to safety.
The last line is, on the deck, Kyle Haven's blood pooled in standing puddles. So they reject Kyle's blood as well.
Yes, which valid. Fair enough.
Yeah, I guess. You don't want a piece of Kyle Haven with you forever.
Yeah. I mean, I do. I feel bad for... No. I do feel bad is what I was going to say. I do feel bad for Kyle. I think this is a really sad ending. Kind of like with Kennit, it doesn't necessarily feel fitting. Almost feels accidental in a way.
Yeah, but it also almost feels too easy as well.
Yeah. He doesn't have to deal with any consequences.
Well, no, not that. I think he's kind of dealt with that, but... There's no reunion with Kefria. There's no reunion or confrontation with Malta or Selden. Or Wintrow even. Like, there's no kind of hard feelings that they have to cope with or anything like that. It's kind of wrapped up and they kind of, oh yeah, Kyle did die.
And they can remember Kyle however they want to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not that he didn't deserve death or anything in this story, but like... It also feels really easy to end it like that.
Yeah, I guess. That's kind of how I feel about Kennit's death too, though, in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously...
It was very ignoble and nothing I think grand.
It was a important part of the plot, and I think that it obviously has opened a lot of things up to happening, but sometimes it's like, oh, well... it gets rid of the what will happen when Paragon has to face Kennit again, and
Right.
also is Kennit going to be able to come down from this without looking bad? Like,
And
I don't know. Like,
yeah, the interactions with Althea, like all of that,
yeah,
all those plot lines are just kind of like, well,
he's
death
dead.
now,
So,
which
yeah.
is interesting in its own right, you
Yeah.
know? It's just like back to back, both of these kind of antagonists slash villains are,
Their stories are cut short.
yeah.
And I don't want to say that, I don't want it to come across like I'm saying, like, oh, Hobb is such a lazy writer. She just killed people off, so she didn't have to deal with all the questions.
No, I
That's
don't think that
not,
either.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's the angle. I just want to be clear that that's not the angle I'm coming out of. I definitely think the choices to have Kyle and Kennit die are interesting in and of themselves and take work to have made them work out. And, like, I think it is a skilled choice. I
Right.
just don't love it. I kind of wish it wasn't that easy for them.
Yeah.
Like, it's not fair. But then I guess I'm always struck by this series and these books, how I feel myself saying that a lot. Like, that's not fair. And then it's like, well, I guess that's kind of life though, right? Like,
Yeah.
it isn't, you can't just tie things neatly in a bow in life either. It's not
Yeah.
not a lot of stuff that happens to people in life is fair. It's just what happens to them, and then they have to pick up the pieces.
Like the final trilogy, Chade dies off screen.
Yeah. I think
Like that's really bad to read as a reader of 16 books, right? And he was a
Yeah.
big part of them. But also sometimes that happens when you're off on a quest to save your daughter that's spanning the whole globe or continent or whatever, and your mentor who is sick and probably 115 years old is probably going to die,
yeah.
you know?
It's not, yeah. I think something that Hobb does well is that frustrating feeling.
Yeah.
But it also makes sense, It's not like it's not frustrating at bad writing. It's frustrating at good writing that's too real.
Yeah, it doesn't feel unearned. It just feels unsatisfying in a satisfying way.
Yes. Yeah. Like, it fits the story so well, and yet I want it to be different. I want a lot of things about these books to be different so that the characters I like have better lives, but I didn't write the book, so
Yeah.
So you have to let us know what you think of the deaths of Kennit and Kyle, and any other thoughts you have about this chapter. Do you like it? Do you feel like Wintrow and Althea are reasonable and normal, or their reactions kind of weird to you?
Yeah. I said I didn't like this chapter or like how certain things were written in it, but it's not because of Kyle and Kennet's deaths or anything like that. Well, Kyle's is just in this chapter, right? And Kennet's was the last one. But
Yes.
it's not because of that. Even though we've just talked about it, it's because of the reaction. So I'd be really curious to what you guys think.
Yeah. And you can let us know what you think at our social medias. We are Is Fitz Happy on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Reddit, YouTube,
Blue Sky.
Thank you. I knew I was forgetting one. Or you can email us directly at isfitzhappy@gmail.com, or visit our website and it'll give you a link to all that stuff and more.
Yes, we are at isfitzhappy.com, or if the redirect does not work or takes a long time, it's isfitzhappy.podbean.com.
We look forward to hearing from you next time. Okay, now we're going to read some things that you guys have brought to our attention, our favorite part. And we're going to start with an email that we got from a listener named Harry. And Harry is writing to talk about Wintrow's struggle with Kennit and what Kennit has done to Althea, which is very aptly timed because we just were talking about that.
Exactly.
So Harry writes in to talk about how they think that one really important thing Hobb touches on with Wintrow is how he doesn't want to believe Althea because it makes him look bad. I think one of the reasons people, especially men, often don't want to believe a friend has done a terrible thing is that they think it reflects badly on them by association. The logic is something like, if my best friend of 10 years rapes someone, that makes me look bad for having been their best friend. So it's easier to think that they didn't do it. I think Wintrow kind of admits that this is the reason he didn't speak up, and I think it's well done by Hobb that Wintrow actually gets much more criticism for his decision post-rape than his earlier choices, because it's an important lesson to the reader that it's not your fault if you don't realize someone is capable of that kind of action and befriend, but it is your fault if you keep supporting them. Sorry if it's a bit garbled, hopefully that makes sense, and I think that is really well said.
It does make sense. So
Yes,
thank
and
you,
it does
Harry.
make sense.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we were trying to touch on too, that I mean, not exactly this point, but like in Wintrow's mind, it reframes his entire thing, right? But what Althea is focused on is I don't care about the before, you're not doing it now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the point that Harry's trying to get across, that Hobb communicates well.
Yes, that it's to Wintrow, it does matter what happened before.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very human, right? To think like I should have known better. Even if it's not something bad that happened to you, if it's somebody that you know is involved in something like that, you start questioning your association with them of how did I not see it? Like I
Right.
thought I was somebody who is good, who would know something and would be able to stand against that. And I think there is that sort of human want to ignore the uncomfortable because it makes us uncomfortable having, knowing something like that. And I think it is well done by Hobb to make that part of the criticism of like, actually, people don't care that you were friends beforehand.
Yeah.
It's the after that you're standing with them publicly that matters.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you, Harry.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. That was really well said. We also got some messages on Facebook for
It was episode 237. This is one from Ellen and one from Christian. We've already talked about some of Christian's questions, but they also made very similar comments about, I believe, something that you said in that episode, which was chapter 31, about how you had read ahead a little bit and were having trouble keeping track of what happened in what chapter.
Yes. And so Christian was writing to read that having caught up with you and only getting one chapter per week, it was a challenge at first, but I'm getting used to it, getting the hang of it. And then Ellen also mentioning that it's so much easier now to just read from chapter to chapter, whereas earlier, it was more challenging for them because you'd be getting invested in one storyline and then switch to somebody else's storyline. You'd start caring about Ronica just to be taken over to Althea, who is on a completely different continent doing something completely different.
Yeah, and then Wintrow after that.
Yes. And so even though now in these chapters, there is more changing of perspective, probably per chapter, it's also all just one continuous story.
Right.
And the things happening is happening to every perspective that we're switching in between. And so it's a bit easier with that switch, but it does make the chapters blend together.
Exactly. Yeah. It's much easier to keep reading, which does not help the chapter to chapter stop and digest it kind of thing and discuss it. So yeah, it's something that sometimes we definitely struggle with as well. Like we've taken turns that you've read ahead a few chapters, I've read ahead a few chapters. It kind of depends on what our moods are and what we're interested in and what storyline there is.
Well, it's hard too, because I do feel bad whenever one episode be like, oh, I don't remember what happens, but I don't know how they're gonna, fix this problem. And then the very next chapter it's solved and it makes sense. And of course that's what happened. But obviously with 16 books, being rereaders, like you remember a lot of things, but you cannot remember every single detail. And personally, if I were to continuously read these books over and over again so that I could remember everything that happened fresh for the podcast, I wouldn't be able to tell which chapter happened in anyway. And I think number one, I would lose my mind from rereading the same book so much. But also number two, I think it just would like be less fun to speculate about like how are they doing that. I think there's some joy in being reminded,
Right. Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that is that little plot
You know,
is something that happens later.
I don't need to know everything because I like to be surprised even if I'm rereading something, you know?
Yes. So I hope that's not too annoying for all of you listeners, but it's good to know that you guys also have similar struggles in the reading and even listening along where it's harder to go chapter by chapter and not get to just do big chunks. So,
Right. Yeah.
so thanks for dealing with that with us for 5 whole years.
And then there's another comment on our most recent post on episode 240, the Inheritance short story, our 5-year anniversary special. Kristen comments that congratulations to us first, so thank you very much for that, but is also asking what we would ask Robin Hobb if we met her. So Kristen was just listening to episode 148 where we were talking about what we would ask Robin Hobb, and Kristen says that they think they would ask why Kefir was written out of the final trilogy, why all those kind of things are off in that final trilogy there. And I think it would be fun to revisit it now. You know, this is 100 episodes later.
Yeah.
What would you ask Robin Hobb now? So I don't remember our answers then.
Yeah, I don't either. I would want to know about the plot behind the whole, like the reasoning behind Kefria and Malta and all that stuff.
I honestly think it's just editing mistakes.
Yeah,
I think it's after 16 books, it's a lot to keep track of. It's over 20 years, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I was going to ask something about Barrel Guy originally. Long live the Barrel Guy memory. It's been long enough now that I don't even remember what Barrel Guy did that made me want to ask a question.
You don't? Oh, to ask a question? No,
but I know what he did. I know he was a jerk to Fitz. Like, I remember that. But I think there's a question of something that he did that I was going to ask Hobb about as a joke. And I know that I said it. I just don't remember what the question was. Other than jokey questions, I think I would love to talk to Robin Hobb about her writing style. I would love to hear from her just how she keeps the threads separated and how much of it is happy accident and how much is like fully planned out to be through all of the series.
Yeah. She's done a few interviews similar to that, but it'd be nice to just kind of
chat with
free form. Yeah. Not an interview style.
Yeah. I don't love the idea of like her being on a stage and me being in a mic asking a question. Like that feels really nerve-wracking to me, but I also don't love the idea of me ambushing her at a cafe and be like, oh my God, you're Robin Hobb. I love you so much. Here's some questions I have for you.
Explain your whole profession to me, please.
Yes. So in this made-up scenario, I think I would have to like have sent her an email and she has invited me to her home because she listens to the podcast and loves us and especially me. And so we're best friends
have
now.
Have a nice cup of tea.
And she's like, ask me whatever you want about the book. This is the one chance. And I'll be like, all right,
get to pet her dogs, you know.
See her chickens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If you don't follow Robin Hobb on social media,
it's very comfy content.
Yes, very, very comfy content. It's very fun.
I feel like I would want to ask her something, like if it was in front of like a stage and a convention or something, I would want to ask her something quite small that's a mystery that would be like relatively easy answer or something that you could joke about, something like that. I don't know exactly. I think I've read some things and be like, oh, that'd be a fun question to ask her, but I can't remember any of those. But what I would really want to ask her in the same setting as you is like the history of things.
Yeah.
Like how things really piece together. Like where did the Elderlings go? How did they disperse? That sort of stuff.
Yeah, that just made me think my question, if I only get one question, is are Ida and Elle or even Saw, are they real? And if they're real, are they actually gods, or is this like a legend that has just like gone, like my theory of it being dragon and human, first dragon and human
elderling.
Oh yeah, an elderling, or you know whatever. Mm-hmm. So I would love to know about the religion in the book.
Yeah. or
And
what made the whites die out.
yeah.
Something like that. But yeah, something that would take longer than just a one question thing, probably.
Yeah.
If we were going to a convention with her at some point, I would probably research some questions and
Yeah.
try to figure out something really good. But
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would love to meet her one day, though. I think
yeah,
that'd be
definitely too.
cool.
We should send emails.
We should.
Anyway, thank you very much for that, for the comment. We kind of piggybacked on your comment to add a
Yes.
question to it. But
So thank you for that.
yeah, it might be 100 episodes before you hear this, but we appreciate it.
And we also got a really cool message on Facebook from
Anne. Yeah.
Anne. Yeah. And this is about a gift that they got. Their sister made them a embroidered book cover bag, a book bag, I guess.
Yeah, a messenger bag that looks like the first book.
Yeah.
Basically.
And it's really, really cool. And I just want to say that I love when you guys send us stuff like that, where whether it's your own art or somebody else's art or just like a craft or something, I think it's so fun to get to see how you all interact and celebrate with the books and the series in your own ways, and things that you find out there that you enjoy. I think it's very fun because, I mean, at the end of the day, Luke and I are just two Realm of the Elderling nerds, so we also enjoy that sort of stuff. So thank you, Anne, for showing us that, and tell your sister that she did really good. And then last but not least, we have a message on Instagram from Felix.
Yeah, and they're writing in just to talk about some of the translation things because they've been reading in Finnish.
Yeah, so we got some really cool information, which we haven't talked about in a while, some translations of the names in another language. And so we got to find out that Malta in Finnish means be patient, which especially after the chapters with Cosgo, is very fitting.
Yeah, in the imperative form. So it's like, be patient.
Yes. So not to be patient, just be patient, which is kind of fun that's the translation. And then also that Lady Patience's name is translated to, I'm so sorry if this is not how you pronounce it.
Do you even want to try to pronounce it?
Kind of.
All right, go for it.
Okay. Milan Malti? Milan Malti?
Milan Malti? Yeah, I don't know.
I'm so sorry. I didn't take any
Finnish
or Germanic languages or any Nordic languages when I was in school. I just did Spanish, and that won't help me here.
And English is barely a Germanic language.
Yeah,
like it's not really.
English doesn't really count, unfortunately, in this. Yeah. So
that's translated to patience of the mind or patience of mind.
Patience of mind. Yeah. So Lady Patience's Finnish translation translates to patience of mind, which is fun.
Yeah, and Felix says that the Finnish translation for the first Liveship Traders book was published last autumn, so they haven't had a chance to look at what the translator made of the name, but Finnish translations of the Tawny Man and the last Fitz trilogy, Malta is not altered, so
yeah,
it'd be interesting to see if there was any changes to the Liveship Traders.
Yes, and there was. We also get another translation for Beloved. Beloved in Finnish. Again, I'm so sorry if I'm butchering this, but Kulta.
Either Kulta or Kulta.
Kulta. It could be that. Yeah. But it's spelled Kulta, which means gold. And it's a very good translation because it's commonly used for loved ones and also children. That makes it unbelievably lucky that Beloved chose to use Lord Golden, which is Lordy Kultainen. I thought it was clever of Robin Hobb until I realized it was the translator that was clever. And so that is that's a fun little tidbit that
good translation really enhances.
It really does.
A lot of the works.
I've always really admired translators because it would be really hard to translate a story and keep sort of the like nuances that come with language, especially in a story like this where
you can't do word for word.
No.
In any story, but especially in this one where the word meanings are important to the names.
Yes. And I think it's so interesting to have to creatively get around that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, obviously you could translate everything word for word, but it's going to sound weird. It's not going to sound natural. You have to translate in a way that reads normal to the people reading it in their language.
Right, because you're not going to, if you want to translate it to Finnish, you're not going to have somebody who was born and raised in America reading it in Finnish so they would understand all of the references and turns of phrase. It has to be in their colloquial turns of phrase, basically. Their idioms, their parts of speech.
And so little things like that where the translator has chosen Beloved, which is a gold name. Yeah. I think that's so interesting to find that. And then also Felix mentioned that in case you're wondering about the similarity, Kulta is a Germanic loan word. So that's really fun to know as well. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I thought it was really fun to get a little sneak peek at another languages translations for names. I know we've done that before with Italian and French and maybe German.
Maybe Swedish.
It's been a while
making
though.
That up. Yeah, it's been probably a few years. So,
but yeah, no, it's always really cool to get to see sort of how translators have decided what they've picked and how that matches to the English version. And it's always really fun when we get people who comment in who are not or who speak multiple languages who can know the difference and tell us what they think of it. I think that's always really a cool little thing to know. And then a little cool fact for all of us to know as a group. So
I do want to throw an apology Felix's way as well, because at the beginning they say that when we say traitor, sometimes it sounds like traitor.
Yes.
And I do want to apologize because we both have a Midwest American accent, which turns all of the T's into D's.
Yeah.
It's not butter, it's butter, like you put butter on your bread.
Yeah.
So that is how we say all of our T's, and it just kind of slurs together. So apologize to everybody out there who does get those confused. It's probably a lot more than just you, Felix.
Yes.
I try to make it clear when I'm saying Devad Restart was the traitor, but
but it sounds funny. Yeah, no, it is really funny accents doing that. And it is, I think a thing both of us do. I want to pretend like it's mostly Luke because he's from Wisconsin, and I feel like that's more of a Wisconsin thing. But I've lived here long enough to where it has also affected the way I speak. So, yeah. So I guess I also do it. I know. And it is kind of a Midwest thing, like you said. Yeah. So,
well, thank you very much for those comments there and the information.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody who writes in, whether it is a correction, a comment, a silly question, a translation, or just merch that you got that you are enjoying. We always look forward to hearing from you and finding out what you're up to. So we look forward to hearing from you next week.